So yeah, I really want to thank you once again for doing this, and for maintaining your desire to do that, despite it took some time to arrange that. But I'm honestly, I was very much looking forward to this conversation because I've been wanting to speak specifically with you for probably a number of years now. I got introduced to your music from a YouTube channel that was very popular back in the day, Brian Starr's channel, you know.
Yep.
And since that time, and this is really not exaggeration of any sort, I've been, listening to Between the Roses specifically, and your music in general, probably um, every week since then, and I've always been very fascinated with your artistic approach and your very distinguished style when it comes to, when it comes to expressing yourself, expressing your emotion, expressing your perceptions on the world through music. So I've always wanted to pick your brain and just understand
Yep.
more about you as a personality and how you develop this approach towards again laying out your views to the world through music and through art. So yeah, it would be great if you can just walk me through and tell me how did you develop this connection to music and art in the first place, I guess?
Well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate all that, man. That means a lot. Dude, it's interesting because it's something that I guess I never really I didn't think about too much. I never was thinking about like, oh, this is how I'll approach music and
Mm-hmm.
art or whatever. But I mean, I kind of first found music when I was younger, like going into high school, I got my first guitar and just wrote a song one night and
Mm-hmm.
I think what happened was I just was able to kind of express something that I never could, but in words. I've always been kind of an introverted person, like not
Mm-hmm.
outgoing, not really able to, talk to people that well.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to kind of realize I could use music to do that, but it was also just really healing for myself to just write these songs and then, just understand more
Mm-hmm.
like what I was going through or whatever. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's kind of how it's always been. Like it's never really changed.
Mm-hmm.
And just to see people starting to connect with that stuff, like it was kind of surprising because I always wrote about, hard stuff that I was going through or
Mm-hmm.
sadness or whatever. Um, but it was really cool, man, like to see so many people connect to it and then like just be able to relate to people. And that kind of pushed me to continue to do that and to try to stay vulnerable through my
Mm-hmm.
songs. And
Mm-hmm.
the less I think about it, I think the more I'm able to do that. And as start a career and you start doing these other things, it's really easy to start listening to what other people say and kind of lose sight of that.
Mm-hmm.
But anytime I've done that, it's just kind of felt like, well, what's the point? Then
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not just saying what I want to say, and that's kind of what I kept doing, really, man. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you don't know what to say or you don't have anything to say,
Yeah.
but I try to just capture the moments when I do have something to say or inspiration hits or whatever, and just do it, just flow with it and try not to think about it too much. So I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
Uh, it makes the perfect sense to me, and specifically what really dragged me to your music and what personally impressed me is that as you said, you've always touched on difficult themes, deep profound topics for people, from a personal perspective. And what really fascinated me was that um, despite that, your music always had a sense of, I guess, tranquility and calmness to itself, which really struck with me because obviously the topic that you've mentioned, and I'm specifically referring again maybe to songs that I've connected with from Between the Roses, that of Anastasia and the song of Sparrow and so on, which are these very deep and profound songs that at the same time had this sort of even uplifting feel to them, at least to me. So I'm very curious to hear, you know, what's the emotional dynamic when you're thinking about these topics, when you're expressing them to your music. Like, I'm really interested to hear what's your perception on them, so you manage to deliver them in such a rich way.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I think looking back on it, it's a lot of my music. I guess the way I would describe it is really I'm just using those songs as kind of a vessel to convey an emotion. It's like
Mm-hmm.
something you can't put into words, but you have to
Mm-hmm.
find a way to kind of. So I think a lot of times when I'm writing those and, singing them and recording them, I'm kind of focusing on the subtext of what it means, like I'm imagining and feeling those things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost in a way like the words don't necessarily matter as much,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm just always trying to kind of get that emotion across. And a lot of times it's kind of just been this like sense of, just, I don't know, just like loss or longing and just like one kind of wondering like what
Mm-hmm.
happens after death and
Mm-hmm.
the sense, because through life, we meet people, we connect with people, and that's one of the strongest things we can feel. And then like losing that, even if it's a person or anything, a change in your life, like that's a very like deep feeling. So I think a lot of it has come from that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always just kind of, developed a perspective that you just have to kind of keep going. You just
Yeah.
don't know what's around the corner. And, maybe that's a bit of a coping mechanism, but I've always tried to, I guess, appreciate the harder parts of life
Mm-hmm.
and, realize that the good parts can't be there without those, hard moments and going through
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. So yeah. And the art of Anastasia specifically was something that I actually had a dream about that song, like those lyrics. And
Mm-hmm.
so I feel like I've always kind of tapped into that like dreamy state,
Yes.
but I like
Yeah.
that's, just kind of a spiritual state too, like meditative state,
Mm-hmm.
and that's been a big part. And I can't really make music and stuff without that, if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. So, like, do you remember, like, the first time you've experienced this sort of spiritual experience that helped you to create a song? Like, what was it like for you, if you obviously have a memory of it?
Yeah, man, it's hard to think back, I haven't thought
Yeah.
about this stuff for so long, but
Yeah.
I think it was maybe Between the Roses probably was the first album where I just like really felt that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the whole process of how that album happened, it was pretty crazy. Just all the synchronicities and everything. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I could tell you a specific kind of,
Yeah.
thing, but I think that album just wrote itself. Like I didn't really have to try. And I think I was just like, wow, like I just kind of have to follow that. And then like
Mm-hmm.
I think that album made me realize it's not really me writing
Mm-hmm.
stuff. It's not really me making this stuff, creating it. I'm just kind of like a vessel for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, whereas before I didn't really have that perspective. I was still, making stuff, but yeah, man, that album was a very kind of spiritual experience, I guess, for me. And I recorded a full version of that album, which was 15 songs. And then the guy that I recorded with,
Mm-hmm.
something happened with his computer and we lost the whole thing.
Wow.
Um, which was interesting because I really wasn't happy with it. I just was like, this isn't right. So it was
Mm-hmm.
just this crazy synchronicity. And then I ended up meeting Caleb Dennison, who was the drummer for Never Shout Never,
Mm-hmm.
at a show, and got talking to him and flew down to Joplin and record that with him. And it was just, yeah, it was really cool. It was a really just kind of a follow your heart type of situation, and it worked out. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it makes, everything that you're explaining makes great sense, because um the dreamy spiritual part that you're referring to is exactly how I am perceiving the music as well.
yeah,
It's so different and distinguishable from everything else. So everything that you're saying makes describes everything perfectly. You've mentioned something very interesting that I'll be interested to explore as well. You've mentioned that you almost feel as a vessel that is just expressing the emotion that you're receiving in a certain way. Can you talk a bit more about that, because it's such an interesting concept. It sounds as a very um is a very genuine representation of what art is. So
Yeah.
even if it's about expressing this process for you as an emotion or whatever the case might be, I'd love to hear how would you describe this?
Yeah, man. No, it's an interesting thing to talk about, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to think of how I can explain it properly. But I guess,
Yeah.
like throughout my life, like, just besides music, like as a human, it's like anytime you try to control things and you try to like do everything on your own and figure it out, like I've found you just end up in bad places, and things just, I guess, kind of when you let your ego, like just our minds and our
Mm-hmm.
thinking that, we know everything, when you let that kind of run your life, it's just, I struggled a lot through my life with just like alcohol and drinking and stuff like that. And I got sober about 4 years ago, and I learned a lot through that process too. And I guess I realized like it's all kind of tied in,
Mm-hmm.
with music and everything too. But I guess, I've also started like, I've kind of transitioned over to filmmaking,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been interesting because it's like the same experience as with music, where you show up and you trust that it's going to work out if you just put your whole heart into
Mm-hmm.
it, and you don't know how things are going to work out. It's the same within a studio, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how these songs are going to turn out right, but I think it's just kind of something you can't explain. You just got to trust it, and I don't know what it is, if it's, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, but
Mm-hmm.
I just know I can't do it on my own. And there's been times when I've tried that, and I've failed, and it's something I don't really understand, but
Yeah.
it seems to be kind of a universal thing where you just have something that you believe you just really want to express, or it's like that thing needs to be expressed.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're willing to be the one to kind of, step up and do that, then things just kind of fall into place. And
Mm-hmm.
even just writing a song, you just, like every song I've written, I would say like it's always been the same, where the chorus lyric or theme or
Mm-hmm.
melody will just pop in, and I write
Wow.
everything around that central theme.
Yeah.
Whereas if I sit down, I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna write a cool song today. I don't
Doesn't
know. It
work.
just doesn't work. I mean, you can do it, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty interesting, man. So
That's so amazing, to hear all of this from your perspective. Um, did it did it take time for you to get used to being open to these sort of influences and putting yourself in a situation where you can represent them in the best possible manner, or did you need some time to adjust and maybe make yourself more um, you know, open and perceptible to them?
yeah, no, it's a good question. I think when I was younger, when I was first starting,
Mm-hmm.
um, I get introduced into like meditation and the law of
Mm-hmm.
attraction, all that stuff. And I was super into it. And I was just like always meditating, visualizing, and just really just tapping in,
Mm-hmm.
and people have different views on that stuff. But for me, it was helping, visualizing my goals, like playing Warp Tour was something I every night
Mm-hmm.
visualized. And then, I got
Wow.
to do it eventually, but it's like, it got harder as I got older to kind of stay connected to that, because things just happen in your life, and
Mm-hmm.
you get hardened a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I got pretty disconnected from that part of myself for a long time, and I've just kind of recently started to like find that again
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. So yeah, I think like maybe it does take work to stay in that spot, but it's hard. It's hard because you just want to be comfortable and do what's easiest in the moment or whatever, But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, dude, I don't know. I don't know if that, hopefully what I'm saying makes sense. I haven't done one of these in a while, but
No, it makes perfect sense. And in the end of the day, the instinctive answers are the best ones, because
yeah,
as you've said, like, these are not things that most of the time words can express and describe properly. So obviously it's very difficult to pinpoint the different parts in the most accurate way. But um, for me personally, everything that you're mentioning makes all the sense, because I can at least connect to what you were saying in a certain way. you know
yep,
I'm interested also to hear, like, obviously I've been following your career, and it's very obvious that you have a very strong principle to always try new things, to be, to create the music not that is necessarily being expected from you, but that is the truest to you at this specific moment. How did, maybe your development as a personality is attached to the development of your music and the creations that you are doing? Like, how is, um, for example, how are you different as a person and as a musician from, for example, from the time when you created Between the Roses, like,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
no, it's a good question. Um, I think now, my idea of success is way different now than it
Hmm.
used to be. And I think I was really chasing specific things,
Hmm.
and that influenced a lot of what I did,
Hmm.
And I think kind of what it for now, like with music, I've done pretty much like all I set out to do with it, and like
Hmm.
in the last 15 years, like I'm just happy with what I did. And if nothing else happens, I'm good. And I know that's kind of a weird place to be, but I think I just realized, chasing that stuff and success and money or whatever, it doesn't, it doesn't make you happy. I mean, maybe some people it makes happy, but for me, I just found happiness in other things and just like living life and just the small
Hmm.
things and,
Hmm.
and working on films and stuff. So I kind of forget your question now, but I think that just has a lot to do with it. It's just,
Hmm.
I just don't, I think there were a lot of times where I did it for other people. There was a period where, I had labels interested and I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
need to be doing certain things. And,
Hmm.
now I just do it for myself when I feel like it. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's interesting, man, because it's like, the more success you get, I feel like with anything, you have more people telling you, oh, you should do it this way, or you need to focus on these
Hmm.
things. And I think it's a lot of bands and artists, you can still have success, but I feel like the music and the stuff that they put out, a lot of people say like their first album was their best,
Yeah.
and I think that's because they made it just because they wanted to make it and it was about the music.
Hmm.
So for me, it's just kind of like if you can't focus on that, then it's just kind of pointless. But that's just my opinion. I know, that's not everyone's feeling, but
Yeah, I think obviously it's a personal opinion, but I think lots of people would agree with you, because in the end of the day, like, if you're not creating a genuine product that represents yourself, you can't expect people to connect with it as well, right?
yeah,
So, and in the end of the day, if you are not devoted to your product, it's just it kind of contradicts the whole purpose of creating music, right? So,
yeah, definitely.
I perfectly understand what you mean in this case. You've obviously mentioned how you've connected to music before, and sort of what was the creative process back then. Um, would you say it's different now, or would you say that the concept is always the same?
I think it's different now because I mix and produce and everything myself, so I have
Hmm.
just total freedom,
Hmm.
which is awesome. Like I really enjoy just being able to do that now. I think before it was always a little more pressure and a little more there's going to be other people in the room and
Hmm.
um so it is different in that way where it's just more of a chill kind of relaxing thing.
Hmm.
Um and I guess I'm not really attached to stuff anymore in a way.
Hmm.
Like, before it's like this album needs to be amazing and needs to do well and lead to this thing.
Hmm.
And now it's just kind of like I just want to make the song and I'm good, put it out
Hmm.
and the rest is whatever. So yeah, it's cool. It's cool to be at that place like genuinely and just kind of not care in a way, if
Yeah,
that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
But I would say as far as like the writing and stuff, it's funny because I've been working on it's called Bury the Roses. It's gonna be the third album in that trilogy.
Hmm.
Just started working on that the last couple weeks. Got two of the songs recorded and it's very much like Between the Roses kind of vibe, just acoustic
Wow.
and it's been cool to tap into that. But it's like not trying and not being like, oh, this should be like a full band thing because that's what does well, and just
Yeah,
like just letting it go.
yeah.
And that's been cool. So
Is it difficult for you to, neglect all the objective reasoning that is being expected from you, and just solely devote yourself to this approach in terms of self-expression? Like, do you have moments of doubt where you are like, well, maybe this is not the right approach. Maybe I need to do that. Maybe I need to do, this. Or like, how you approaching these sort of decisions? Is it easy for you to decide, or?
It's sometimes it's so like the first song I just recorded for this, I recorded it 3 times because the first two I just was like, it's not right, you know? So I feel like I just kind of internally know when something is like, that's kind of my compass, and that's always been my compass.
Mhm.
But I have like, close friends that I will send them to that I really trust, how they feel when they hear it and stuff like that. But I think it's not it's easier now. Like I don't really seek kind of like the validation from other people on it. I just
Mhm.
go by if I feel it when I listen, then
Mhm.
I'm good. So
That's, I think, that's the best possible approach, I guess, when it comes to creating art. So it's good that, you've reached this level, I guess, because I'm sure you'd agree there's so many bands and artists out there that just don't have, I guess, the courage to do that sometimes, which in the end of the day is damaging just for the art itself. So,
yeah,
yeah.
and it's I'm also pretty well aware that not making certain decisions or not doing things a certain way is a compromise. It's like I
Mhm.
might not have the level of success that some people do,
Mhm.
but I'm just okay with that. And it took me a long time to be okay with that and just like grateful for what I do have and the people that are there.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I think it's a compromise either way a little bit.
Amazing. Um, like, in the end of the day, what would you say is the most important thing for you when it comes to music? Is it the satisfaction and the reward of feeling this, that you've achieved yourself, just achieving this self-expression that you needed? Is it about seeing your music, being connected with other people and so on? Is it the combination of all? Like, how, what makes you feel best about your music?
I think I still, I love like the release day, just knowing it's out there. I think that's like,
Yeah.
regardless of how many streams it gets or whatever, just knowing it's out there, I think is probably my favorite feeling. Just being like, that's done,
Nice.
that's out there, and seeing people connect to it and stuff, that's great too. Like it's always encouraging. So
Hmm.
yeah.
That's great. That's great. It makes all the sense as well. That's nice. I mean, it, do you like, looking back at all the music that you've released and you've created, is there like a specific song that now, from retrospectively, you really appreciate and you feel very connected with, and you're very proud of, essentially? Or is this, applying to all the stuff that you've created?
Yeah, I think like I look at all my songs and albums as just like, oh, I remember that moment in my life type of thing, and I
Hmm.
see kind of the like the personal value in all of them. But there's some songs like the song "Shallow," which is
Hmm.
on Beautiful Mess. It's an album
Hmm.
that I still really love and just connect to because I know I just really caught it. I captured that exactly how I wanted to. And
Hmm.
Here's My Heart's another one. October, a lot of the like acoustic tracks, I really just
Yes.
it's weird because every kind of album I feel like on Between the Roses, the song "The Distance That Took You Away" was
Yes.
one of my favorites. And then on, I kind of followed the same album structure in a little way for the next album, and the song October was "The Distance That Took You Away" of that album. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's just a different feel. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but I really like those songs. Just like the kind of really just simple,
Yes.
you you don't have to hide behind any production and
Yeah.
other stuff.
They're so honest and raw, and I guess that makes them, for me personally, very, very special as well. I mean, considering the fact that, with lots of your songs, you've been investing so many pure and raw emotions and personal experiences. is it sometimes difficult for you to hear them back? And like, do they make you relive certain moments and experiences? And I'm interested, how's this dynamic working for you, because they're so pure, and I can imagine what it's like to like connect with the memories that made you, create a certain song.
Yeah, no, that's a great question too. Like, I think there's some I don't really listen to
Yeah.
because sometimes, yeah, it does bring me back to things. But
Mhm.
sometimes I don't mind that. Sometimes it is kind of nice to reminisce a little bit. Excuse me. And just remember those things and see how things have changed. So
Mhm.
sometimes I'll randomly just have a feeling I just want to put this song on or an album on and, just
Yeah.
listen to it. But a lot of times, when I finish a song, I listen to it on repeat like the whole night, and
Yeah.
then I'm good for a while. I just really kind of get into it, absorb it and then just let it go. But it'll, come back sometimes. Years
Yeah.
later, I'll just hear it and be like, wow. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense. Like, um, do you like do you have a you kind of answered this question, but are there songs that you connect with and associate with key moments in your life? I guess there are. I guess all of them are, to some extent. But are there any that like hold a special place in your heart in one way or another?
Yeah, I think they all do, in a
Yeah.
way, like
Yeah.
specifically albums, because that they take long, so it's kind of more of a period of your life.
Yeah.
But I honestly I would say Between the Roses still holds a really special place
Mhm.
because that was just kind of the start of my career in a lot of ways, and just like, you know, just just so many cool synchronicities. Like when I was younger, kind
Yeah.
of a random story, but we're
Yeah.
in like a photo photography class. We had to do Photoshop and make like a goal thing, just make pictures of the things you want to achieve. And
Yeah.
I always wanted to go to like the Waffle House in Joplin, Missouri, because Never Shout Never was my favorite band. They just sang
Uh,
about it. So I photoshopped myself sitting in there. And when I went to record that album, I got to go to that specific one with those guys. And just like little things like that where I was just like, wow, this is just so cool. And it was a huge learning experience, doing my
yeah.
first album. And yeah, it was really cool. So that one I would say probably the most
That's
special to me.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
What would you say is like the the proudest, most memorable point of your career, aside of these things that you've mentioned?
I mean, there's been a couple. I would say it's probably still getting to play Warp Tour
Hmm.
and, having like one one show in my kind of hometown of Toronto
Hmm.
where just all my friends and family like came. Like it was just packed, it was a
Nice.
huge crowd and that was still one of the coolest moments and just hitting those little goals, you set
Yeah.
out to do and
Yeah.
yeah, that was still one of the top. I've had so many, amazing moments like touring and, all that stuff, but it's just can't even count them all. But
How old were you when you played Warped for the first time?
it's 2015. Um, I can't remember. I have to do the math.
Yeah.
I'm not good at math. I'm 29 now, so what would that be? Like
uh,
19, 20 or something?
yeah, around that, around
Yeah,
that.
something like that. Yeah.
So what was that for you like? Like you're going there, you're probably seeing lots of the bands that you've been listening to for the first time, hanging out backstage, living this sort of experience. Do you have like specific memories from this day?
It was honestly, it was like insane to me, like at the time, coming from, just like such a small town, like where I grew
Mhm.
up and just being around all those people. Like I didn't necessarily know how to navigate it in a way. So I think I
Yeah.
kept to myself a little bit, which I look back and I wish I had, gone out and,
Yeah.
made more connections and friends. But it's just all was so amazing, man. Like, just the bus rides and hanging out with I was on the bus with Brian and all those YouTubers and stuff. And,
Yeah.
just some of those special bus rides, driving all night, just sitting up and talking, like that kind of
Nice.
stuff. Just really loved it. So yeah, I probably drank a little too much through that to remember it all properly, but that's what it was at the time. So, but yeah, really cool, man. Really cool.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. Um, so, you know, obviously you've mentioned that back then you had different motivations to create music. You've mentioned that at this point it's more about self-expression and creating what you want to create, essentially, right? Um, like how how would you say like this how would you say that this idea of creating music developed its intensity throughout the years? Like, do you still have the same passion to creating as back then? Is it more of a just thing that you're used to, so you're doing it, or why? I'm just interested to hear what's your emotional attachment to creating
Yeah.
music and how it progressed throughout the years.
Yeah, man. I would say now it's way less than it used to be, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that's partially because, I mentioned like I'm just kind of turning into filmmaking, and that's also
Yeah.
something I've always wanted to do, and I did a little bit throughout the years and whatever, but I think it's just taking that energy and putting it into that now.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I guess, I don't know if you saw, but I decided to leave social media and just
Yeah.
like decided I just don't really want to tour anymore and
Yeah.
just kind of turn focus. And it was hard to do that, really hard to let go of all that stuff. But I feel good about it now. I feel peaceful about it. And I think it's made music a little more enjoyable because there's no attachment or hoping this gets successful or, it's
Mm-hmm.
just, whereas I just didn't have that before, because I was working with people and always kind of felt like I had to make sure I was,
Yeah.
you know, continuing on and carrying things. But so it's an interesting spot to be, and it's still new for me, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm enjoying it so far because it's almost like, in a way, when you stop kind of being attached to something, nobody can take it from you in a way. Whereas before,
Yes.
it's like, oh, if this doesn't do well, or what if my numbers go down? It's just like there's
Yeah.
none of that really anymore.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'd still like to continue to maintain, the audience and all that stuff. But yeah, it's just interesting spot. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about, your social media leaf and so on. Like, tell me more about it. Why? How did you take that decision?
Yeah,
what was the lead up to that?
Yeah, man. Well, so social media has been a part of my life since I was started. It was like
Mm-hmm.
kind of what started my career and like something I always enjoyed to maintain. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
really just scheduled with it and talking to people on there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just, over the years and just throughout my career and just personally, it kind of became more of like, and I think partially because it all changed so much, like social media itself,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
algorithms and just the way it all is,
Mm-hmm.
where it just kind of felt like you're just, throwing stuff at a brick wall in a way. And,
Yeah.
it just started to be where like nobody would see the stuff I post.
Mm-hmm.
I have an email list that I built up that was, always gets more engagement than my social media. So
Mm-hmm.
there's just a lot of things, and also just mental health because it's for me, it's different for everybody, but it's hard to just constantly be bombarded with stuff
Yes.
and just be scrolling for hours and then just being like, wait a minute, like I just wasted all this time, or like I started to think about these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I just made the decision that I just wanted to cut it out of my life because it's been a part of it and just see like find myself outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
And also I think part of it is I always would just be like thinking like what are people going to think of this picture, this post, and like
Yes.
living my whole thing. And that's just me, just anxiety and insecurities or whatever. But I was just like, I don't really know what it's like to live without this.
Mm-hmm.
So I did put out some songs to kind of see how they would do without me posting about them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was no different than, posting. So for me, I just was like, this just, it's, yeah. I mean, it was a lot of work building up all those followers and whatever, but I was kind of just like, what does this really mean to me now? Or
Mm-hmm.
what does this mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying everybody should do that, because it is important for
Mm-hmm.
growing stuff. But I guess I got to a point where I felt like I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's a lot of factors, but that was pretty much it. And I will say like it was probably the best decision I ever made. So like for myself, it's
Yeah.
really changed a lot. So yeah.
Honestly, I specifically wanted to ask you about that because recently I kind of did the same, because I found myself in, um and you probably would understand me in the way that, at some point you're able to think a bit more objectively, and you see how this whole social media dynamic affects your thinking in way
Yep.
more ways than you imagine. And the moment I stopped and distanced myself from it, it improved my mental health so much.
Yep.
It's just incredible what sort of difference can detachment from social media can do. um and from you obviously mentioned the aspects that are related to your music and promoting, but I assume you experience the positive effect from a personal perspective as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Like I just noticed my mind is a lot different.
Hmm.
And I just feel happier, like
Yes.
without really having to do anything. And I think, looking at it too, at anytime I see those, because I still have YouTube, I use
Yeah.
that for a lot of things, but seeing those shorts that are just like TikTok dances or stuff like that, it's
Yeah.
just like, I know that's fun for some people, but I'm just like, I don't know, man. For me, it's just like, I just want to, it's given me more freedom to just focus on what I'm doing in the moment,
Exactly. Yeah.
and that's been probably the biggest thing. And, just not always worrying like, what are people commenting on this or, what
Yeah.
DMs, like, so yeah, it's been pretty big. And I sometimes wish like more people would look at that as maybe a factor for how they're feeling, because I think it probably affects people in a way deeper way than everyone realizes. And as far as, business and all that stuff, I think, a lot of people just focus on micro content all the time. You got to do it this way. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think like that energy could also be used, because I think regardless of social media and how important that is to people, I think the art is still just as important. Like that didn't necessarily go away just because social media came in. So that's just my,
Absolutely.
my perspective. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I perfectly agree with that, and I'm very happy to hear that you share the same mindset, because you know I'm kind of in my in my friends groups I'm sort of preaching this method, and I'm preaching for people to leave social media, because I think, as you've mentioned, it affects people on such a subconscious level that it literally affects your mindset, mentality, the way you perceive life, and all of that.
Hmm.
And it's incredibly saddening for me to look at kids or adults or whatever that are spending literally hours just scrolling and watching reels or TikTok or whatever the case might be, while um, the level of comfort that you experience once you are detached to that, and you sort of um, have the ability and the chance to just spend time with yourself and do
Hmm.
what you want to do rather what is expected from you to do, is like it
Yep.
creates such a significant difference.
Yep.
And besides, I I genuinely wish more people were thinking about the importance of art, as you've mentioned, because I don't know, it feels nowadays, and I'll be interested to hear your point of view as well, but it feels that like musicians and artists are sort of transferring to being content creators rather than people that create art, essentially. And
Hmm.
you see people
Yep.
being famous for doing TikToks and reels or whatever, rather than getting famous for songs and music. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And and I'm well aware like that's what works for some people, and some people, they're happy doing that. But for me, like I've just always been, I would rather just have a slow burn, just
Hmm.
like a more longevity, more grounded. Whereas, a reel can get 3 million views, but then the next one gets 200 views,
Yeah.
like and I know that, that kind of stuff has launched people's careers and helped, but
Hmm.
for me, it's not worth the energy. And I have seen, friends and musicians start to focus so much on that, where it's just, you kind of lose the
Yeah.
person in a way, and it's just
Yeah.
like, I just never wanted to do that. I had people always telling me, oh, you got to get on TikTok, you got to do this. But I tried to make micro content, but I was just
Mhm.
like, this is just so empty because I just don't
Yes.
have anything to say right now.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I agree with that. So
Yeah. Empty is such a good word to describe that, you know. It's encapsulated perfectly. Um, so tell me about your passion for film. You know, it's what how did this happen? What, you know, kickstarted your interest in this area?
Yeah, I mean, so since I was a kid, I've just been obsessed with movies, like Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings, Pirates of the Caribbean. Like some of those ones, I would go outside and just pretend I was in them. And
Yeah.
when I started making music and music videos, I just was like, I would get so excited to do the video parts.
Hmm.
And then eventually, me and my close friend, he had a camera and he was really good at that stuff. So we just started making them on our own, and I would edit them,
Hmm.
and I just learned all about it. And it's just like, wow, it's such another layer to tell the story, and you get to say it like, you can have the song, but then the video can be something totally different.
Yes.
And editing too, like I've just really come to love
Mhm.
editing. But anyway, so yeah, after I moved to Toronto, like into the city, I started to do background work in like big shows like The Boys and
Oh
Netflix
wow.
show, just like being on set, those huge sets. Like I was just in the background, but I was just, that experience was just like, there's nothing like this.
Wow.
And then I got a role in my first feature and did the score for the whole thing. I
Wow.
just kind of got introduced to it. And yeah, and just wrote my first screenplay and wrote another one, and it's just been always something I loved, and really started to learn. Well, not started, but I started a long time ago, just like learning how to do it.
Yeah.
And now that I'm in a position where I can, and I've met the right people, it's just amazing because it's all come together. And yeah, dude, like being on set now is just like my favorite thing. Like we're in the middle of shooting our first feature, which is a horror anthology.
Wow.
And yeah, there's nothing like it, man. And editing and color and all that, just love it. And it's cool, but it's like I'm restarting, in a lot of ways. So it's almost
Yeah.
like the start of my music career. But I feel like that was just kind of training in a lot of ways for this. And
Hmm.
so yeah.
Amazing. Like, can you share more details, for example, about this horror movie or your screenplays? Maybe
Mhm.
give some summaries because I would love to hear, you know, what sort of
Yeah,
stories you're into.
absolutely. Yeah. So the horror is it's an anthology of four different stories that, it's the same cast playing different characters. And I kind of started writing them to write myself roles because acting
Hmm.
is something that I love and I've always, wanted to do more of.
Hmm.
And I've always been, just weirdly good at playing like characters, like doing voices and characters that are super far from where I am.
Wow.
So I kind of use the horror film as just a playground to write some of those kind of characters and write one that's more grounded because I am working on just being able to act just myself as well,
Yeah.
which is really hard. But then, the next screenplay I just finished writing is it's a comedy, drama. It's kind of like emos against rednecks type of thing, like kind of based on a lot
Nice.
of my experiences from when I was younger. But it's a very nice story about these three friends who are trying to save, one guy's grandmother's house from foreclosure, and they have to get in with the rednecks and all this stuff. So,
Nice.
and it's weird because I always thought horror would be my thing
Yeah.
because I always loved horror movies. But after writing it, and we shot one of the stories, I'm about to shoot the rest. I just realized like I just care about the story, and the horror part is actually really tough to pull off.
Hmm.
So I just tried to write something that wasn't that, and I really loved it, and I feel like all of my team really loved it. We actually just did like a table read for it the other day,
Wow.
and yeah, so I'm excited. Like I learned so much, but it's kind of like film school for ourselves, just doing
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
and doing the horror where there's less pressure. It's just all these weird characters and stuff, so we can eventually do some more grounded stuff. So
Wow, that
yeah.
sounds amazing. I really, didn't know about this aspect of what you do. So it's so interesting to hear that because, I'm definitely a big film of aficionado as well. And even with the podcast, we had like screenwriters and write directors and whatnot, especially when it comes to horror movies. I'm a very big fan as well. So tell me more about what got you into horror. Like, do you have favorite movies or yeah, in general, I would love to hear more about your preferences in this area.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love talking about this stuff. So,
Awesome.
I I've seen a lot of horror movies, but I've always been drawn to films like Hereditary and Relic, like
Oh yes.
just films that are it's like less going on, but the horror kind of lies in the silence and in just like the
Yes.
disturbing nature. And
Yes.
that's always really inspired me a lot. And the film It, like the newer version, like that
Hmm.
was filmed in where my dad lives.
Oh wow.
So just having like a connection to that and seeing the movie with some of my actors I love and just knowing all those places, like it was so cool. Um, but yeah, so like like horror films that are more just like you're kind of left with like a sense of dread, like whoa, like what did I just absorb, which
Yes.
isn't always good, but that's so that's kind of how I approached Farlight, which is the
Hmm.
name of our film. It's
Hmm.
kind of turned into something a little different than that, but
Hmm.
that's how I kind of started. I just want to tell these weird stories, It's the slasher thing and all that. Like there's some good movies, but that just never really appealed to me as much.
Hmm.
But something where you could just tell the writer like was really just putting everything into it when he wrote it.
Hmm.
Like those are powerful to me. So
Yeah, psychological thrillers have, always been my go-to horror subgenre, I guess. So
yeah.
I perfectly understand what you mean. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, it seems that, the modern cinema in this area is kind of pulling more of the visual shocking aspect rather than suspense and atmosphere and the terror in it, unfortunately. But yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I
Yeah.
definitely agree with that. um so about the project that you're working, like, uh, do you have any details in terms of how are they going to be released, distributed? Like, do you have any details that you can share at that point, or you are still like on the working area with them?
Yeah, I mean we're still working on it. We don't have
Mhm.
any like distribution locked in or anything
Yeah.
like that, but we are going to release the trailer next month.
Oh wow.
Um and I've really been like trying to learn about distribution and all that stuff and asking some people in the industry just for advice.
Yeah.
But it kind of seems like we might just self-distribute this.
Yeah.
We're going to submit it to festivals and do all that stuff, but as far as I know, you can put your own films up on like Amazon and iTunes and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So at the very least, we'll be doing that and on YouTube and stuff like that. Because
Yeah.
really, we know this is just our first project. It's, we're not hoping to get bought by a studio or whatever.
Yeah.
We're just doing this to learn.
Yeah.
So at the very least, it'll be out there to watch somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
What do you have like a big movie idea that you're kind of saving for when you're in a position to fully develop and create it? Like, do you have like a concept about a big project that you would like to do at some point in the future?
It's funny. Like I actually don't really because anytime I've written anything, I've
Yeah.
written it in a way where like I know we could shoot this ourselves.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
I've always, written it like, oh, I know where we could film this or pull this shot off.
Hmm.
But me and my friend, close friend, we have a comedy web series that we did a bunch of episodes for called Dake and Tyke, where we just played these two, stoner buddies and just go on these crazy
Nice.
adventures. And we did write a film of that, which I feel like could be a bigger production thing. So if
Mhm.
I could ever just shoot something, by then I might have a different idea. But I would love to just do like a big comedy or something, like just a
Uh,
really fun, and a big horror would be cool too, but I feel like I would do the comedy before that. So
yeah.
yeah, who knows? But
Like, uh, where people can watch the stuff that you've released already? Is it on YouTube? Is it on a certain platform?
yeah, it's on YouTube. That Dake and Tyke series
Yeah.
is on YouTube, and I'll be putting the trailer for Farlight on my YouTube channel.
Amazing. That's so cool. Again, I really didn't know about that, and so it's so interesting to explore your activity in this sphere as well. Like, what's did you get easily adjusted to the creative process of writing a story as opposed to obviously writing a song? Like, are there similarities that helped you to transition from one to the other, or like how was this process for you?
It's actually I so far, I'm still pretty new to it, but
Mhm.
it's been a very different process, and I just in the last couple of months have been researching, story structure and screenwriting and just
Mm-hmm.
how people do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote my last one, which I just finished like 3 weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
based on that. And I structured the whole thing out and did scene outlines. And I had like a roadmap. Whereas the first couple I wrote, I just was like start to finish, which was
Yeah.
pretty difficult. So I realized like the preparation was like it was a night and day difference. Whereas you don't really have to do that with songs. So
Yeah.
I think I'm just learning it's like a totally different thing. And I just have to be willing to like embrace totally new things, which is cool. Like I kind of prefer having to learn new stuff and trying things in new ways. So, but I think with editing, because I'm also editing and doing
Mm-hmm.
like all the post production, that's very
Wow.
similar to how I would edit a music video. You just pick
Mm-hmm.
the best takes that tell the story the best way. And,
Mm-hmm.
some takes aren't perfect, but if they convey the emotion, then use those ones. Cause I think a lot of times that's still what you're trying to do, you know,
Mm-hmm.
is just convey like the subtext of the emotion. So I'm still learning
Wow.
though. I can't sit here and say I'm an expert yet, but
Yeah, sure, sure, sure.
it's been cool. So
Sure, yeah. Yeah. Uh that's so interesting. I've always been very fascinated by, the whole process of creating a movie and, implementing a certain atmosphere to it and being able to develop a cohesive story in it. So it's very interesting to hear a perspective from a person who is, into it right now and is sort of
yeah.
figuring it out as it, currently. What's your favorite part, I guess, when it comes to movie making? Like, obviously you mentioned editing, you've mentioned writing, but are there specific aspects that bring you the most joy? Like, for example, brainstorming ideas or developing characters or, whatever the case might be.
Yeah. I think I'm starting to, so me and my team we're just starting to do more frequent meetings and just talking about stuff and
Mm-hmm.
and doing that table reading was just so fun. I'm starting to enjoy that. It like the collaborative nature of it so much.
Yeah.
And everybody kind of growing together. But I would say still my favorite part is just shooting it, like being on set and just
Nice.
action and you're just in it. Like I love it. And it's like super tiring and long days and nights, but it's just the most fulfilling thing, you know.
Yeah.
So that's still my favorite, I would say. Yeah, absolutely. And haven't had a ton of those yet, but just the few we have had, just really just can't wait for the next one.
So
Yeah.
you've worked on, on comedies and on horror as well. In terms of shooting, which genre would you say is easier or more difficult or more fun for you, I guess?
So yeah, so the first story within Farlight was actually kind of a comedy horror. It's like very different from the other three.
Yeah.
So we kind of mixed it. But I think the horror thing, at least like on a small budget, small crew,
Mhm.
is hard because you have to light everything right.
Yeah.
And the camera's getting less light and you have to really be careful with exposure. And we're just using like, prosthetic masks and all that stuff. And it's hard to make that look good. So whereas comedy, you could just pick up and shoot and so I would say the horror has been more challenging than I thought, but
Yeah.
it's also been really cool. Like, we're doing the best we can for what we have. So
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I'm asking this because, a couple of months ago, even in the podcast, I was talking to Jeff Burton, who works with Sam Raimi's brother, Ivan Raimi on horrors and stuff. And he mentioned how difficult it is to sometimes implement this horror atmosphere when you're shooting because everything
yeah,
is so ridiculous on on set. So
yeah,
it's very difficult for actors and directors to make it scary. Like, have you experienced something like that as well?
yeah, definitely, man. I mean, anytime we've done it, it's just, my friend wearing all the costume. So it's hilarious. Like there was one shot where we just had him in a bathtub and put peanut butter and onions in the bathtub, like just to make it look gross. And it was just like so funny. But it's like, it's going to be different in the edit. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when I'm doing any of that, I'm always imagining the edit.
Hmm.
So it's a little easier for me. But yeah, I definitely it's definitely not scary. Maybe it's
Yeah.
some on some big sets it is, but
Yeah.
but that's kind of where you got to use your imagination and just like pretend. So
Yeah, I guess you have to have the vision in terms of how it will end up looking like in the
Yeah,
end of the
for sure.
day. And when it comes to um, these movies, are you working on the music aspect of it as well?
Yes, I will. Yeah. Once the film is done, I'll do like a full score for the whole thing too.
I assume it's different than your usual, music creation process. Um, but how do you like it in comparison with writing a specific song? Like, is it
Yeah,
more
no,
fun to kind of, yeah,
it's a good question. The first score I did was for a Christmas movie called Cup of Cheer.
yeah,
And they wanted a score that was kind of like Home Alone, where like the score goes through the whole thing and it accents different moments and stuff.
yeah,
So I had to kind of look at it like one big song.
hmm
Um, I think in that way it actually wasn't a whole ton different. It was, and same with this. It's really just like accenting moments.
hmm
And it's got like it's a little easier than I thought it would be. Like it's sometimes just a couple piano notes can do it, like
yeah,
and it really depends on the mood or whatever. But with horror, it's actually, I did like a temporary score for the one we just did, and
hmm
it took like 3 hours maybe. And so the less you think about it sometimes, but I know some people that's all they do and they spend months doing it. But
yeah,
yeah, it's interesting. Like it's not my favorite part. It's just kind of like necessary.
yeah, gotcha.
But I think with for something that's like more of like a drama or something more emotional, that's I
hmm
would probably get a little more invested in doing like orchestra and stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense to make it like, pretty rich, obviously.
Yeah.
You've mentioned that you are really interested in acting as well. How did you find out about your interest in acting, I guess? Like how did you realize that you're interested in that, and what aspect of this piqued your interest? Because obviously it's a very specific role, it's a very specific activity, so I assume that there's something that specific that got your attention as well.
Yeah, I think it kind of started with music videos. Um
hmm
just really enjoyed doing it for some reason. Um but then, when me and my friends started making that comedy series, it was just like such freedom. Like it was freedom from like myself and from you
hmm
just get to do like whatever. And that was the nature of that project. But I think it's just like realizing you get to like write these experiences that you would never have in
yeah.
real life. And it's just cool. It's and I feel like I've developed like new aspects of myself through doing that. And
hmm
in the last year I've just been working on, natural kind of acting and just
yeah,
figuring out how to be able to be comfortable doing that. Um, and it's just good, it's helps me kind of try to push that voice in my head aside a little bit. So it's like
hmm
a little bit of personal growth too. And again, like I'm still pretty new at it, but so far that's kind of how it's been. And then, it's interesting. Like I did like a monologue the other day just to kind of do some practice, I just
yeah,
shot it and like watching it back, knowing what I was thinking the whole time and feeling like, oh, this isn't very good. And then seeing it actually translated. And it's just interesting. It's just like, the way you think you look or you're doing, it's not always true. So it's
yeah,
just been really interesting kind of learning thing for me. So
yeah.
yeah.
That's so interesting. Like, did you experience difficulties doing this in front of people? Like, assuming another role or performing, I guess, or was it natural for you to immerse yourself into the role and just be the person that you need to be?
I think like when I'm doing like a character that's
hmm
just like a different voice or whatever, it's like I can easily just snap into it.
Yeah.
But as far as just like, doing something more grounded, I haven't really had that experience yet, besides just like my close friends. So
Yeah.
it's hard to say. But even, just doing stuff on Zoom, yeah, it's always a little harder. And that's something that I want to get past, just
hmm
you're talking to someone else, you just immediately kind of get a little more in your head.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe that'll just come with practice, and that's something that I'm actively trying to just work on. So yeah.
Nice. Um, is there like something, maybe an actor or a movie that influences you to perfect your craft and to like get involved into this sort of project, or is it more about the personal experience that mainly interests you?
No, I think I have actors that I'm just like I would love to be able to do that. Like Jake Gyllenhaal is one of my favorite actors.
Yes.
Shia LaBeouf. Elijah Wood, Daniel Radcliffe, just people who they're just themselves a lot of times, any
Yeah.
actors who just themselves and they're themselves in every role, but they're just able to do it. That always inspires me a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah,
What's your favorite Jake Gyllenhaal movie?
I would say probably Zodiac. That's probably my
Oh,
favorite.
nice, nice,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah,
Have you watched the new Roadhouse?
I did. Yeah,
Did you like
yeah,
it?
I did. Yeah, I mean, I like Conor McGregor too. I always thought he was funny. I think he did great. I
Yeah,
thought it was good. Like I wasn't going into it expecting like a big thing. I just
yeah,
was like, this was fun, and it was cool. Yeah,
yeah. It was definitely better than because I didn't have high expectations as well. Because as yourself, I wasn't expecting to be a masterpiece or whatever, but it was definitely way funnier than I was imagining it to be.
yeah,
And Conor McGregor is just ridiculous. That's so
yeah.
cool.
So yeah, it was funny.
Yeah. What's the last movie that you've watched that really impressed you and influenced you to some extent?
It was actually a recent movie called Marmalade. It's like a new kind of indie film with Joe Keery.
Oh
Um,
yes, yes.
I just really liked it. Like it just really hit me. Like, some movies just leave you with a feeling, and it was just kind of an indie feeling type thing, just kind of a
Hmm.
light comedy.
Yeah.
But and I spent like a week recently watching a bunch of early like 2000s comedies,
Yeah.
Napoleon Dynamite and Juno and
Yes.
Dodgeball and all that. And it's just like, man, there's such the feeling in those movies just it's harder to find these days. So I love that though. So
Yeah, I'm constantly talking about this specific period in cinema because yeah, as you've said, the atmosphere there is so specific and it's so distinguishable, and it's such a feel good vibe, I guess, and so
yeah,
immersive. So and I'm kind of handling these sort of discussions when it comes to music as well, but especially when it comes to music, to movies, I mean, there's so much good stuff there.
absolutely. And I think the same with music too, at least
Yeah.
for me, like a lot of early 2000s, like just a vibe that is just not there anymore. So
Absolutely. Like I was actually going to ask you about that as well because it really seemed, and that's my personal opinion, obviously, but to me, it really seems that, especially when it comes to alternative music as well, that it really peaked around 2008, 2012, around that period. And at the moment, I don't know if it's because I'm growing up or whatever and I'm getting older, but it doesn't seem that music has this sort of authenticity and genuinity to it. Like, do you feel the same? Do you still listen um to alternative music or yeah,
yeah, so like I actually don't listen to that much music anymore.
yeah,
For some reason I don't it just doesn't do much for me now, for some reason. But
yeah,
yeah, no, I do keep up with some artists, but yeah, I think like it's just production has changed.
hmm,
People just go for a lot cleaner sound, and
yeah,
whereas a lot of those earlier bands it was just more raw. And I think
yes,
a lot of those bands worked with like the same producers
produce,
and studios and stuff like that. So I think that was a factor. But yeah, man, no, I definitely agree with you. Like the odd time I'll find a song that's like, oh, this is, feels
yeah,
like that. But I think a lot of it too is like, someone will kind of set a trend, like the emo rap, stuff like that, and then everyone starts
yes,
to kind of go that way, which I also tried. But
yeah,
yeah, it's interesting, man, just trends and how everything kind of flows. It's maybe one day it'll kind of go back, but
hmm,
I think part of it is, anyone can just make a song now on
so
their
yeah.
laptop and all that stuff. So it's just a different kind of world. So
Being
yeah.
being artist yourself, do you see like what might be the reason, for example, for bands that were very active and successful back in these periods that we were referencing, and their production now losing its soul and sounding more generic and not having this authenticity to it? Do you see what might be a reason from their personal point of view as musicians to lead to that result?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things. And like I think sometimes just as a person, you start to like a different type of music
Yeah.
and then you just want to make that. I've known a lot of people that it's just because they want to.
Hmm.
But I think too, sometimes it could be just like the labels like, oh, you should make this type of album because it's
Yeah.
doing well, you know. And sometimes people just follow what might do well.
Yeah.
So kind of going back to what we talked about before. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that there's a lot of factors. But yeah, I definitely have known people who just they used to make that emo stuff and now they just want to write like rock or like
Yeah.
you know, EDM or something like that, which you just got to follow what you want to do, I guess, you know.
Yeah, true. True. It's yeah, do you like, you've mentioned that you're not listening to that much music, but is there like at least an artist, maybe like a current one that you've really connected with, or that you really like at the moment?
I should be able to have an answer, but I mean, I still listen to Post Malone a lot because I
Yeah.
feel like he's the one guy that through all of his success, like he still just puts every like you can just hear it in his voice. Like
Yes.
I love his songs, you know, I throw those
Yeah.
on a lot. Um, Not a lot though, man, to be fully honest. I
Yeah.
throw on a lot of lo-fi when I'm working or whatever, you know, but
Yeah. Yeah. It
I
it
haven't
it,
really,
it
yeah.
makes all the sense because and I've been discussing this with a lot of people as well because I'm finding myself not listening to music as intense as before. Sometimes like I literally spent weeks without listening to anything. At some point, I even found out that, especially in the past when I've been bombarding myself with very emotionally intense music and how this affects you subconsciously and affects your mood and
Yeah.
everything. And
Yep.
I found out that distancing myself from this sort of intensity really helped me. So,
Definitely, man. That's another thing. Yeah. I agree
yeah.
with that. Yeah. And same with movies, you know, horror movies and
Mhm.
stuff. I don't watch that many anymore because yeah, you get some time away and you're like, oh, that I feel a little happier now, you know.
Yeah.
But it's all, you know, it's all just like influencing your subconscious. So,
Yeah.
but you know, a lot of times before when I would write, like I'm gonna write an album, I would listen to music that I wanted the album to kind of sound like a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is kind of yeah, subconsciously you take that in. But that's
Yeah.
definitely part of it for me too. So
Uh, what sort of movies or TV series do you like? Do you enjoy watching when you need to just wind down or relax or chill or whatever?
yeah, man. You know, comedies. Sometimes I watch reality stuff too when
Yeah.
I just, you know, like The
Yeah.
Bachelor, that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
just weirdly kind of enjoy it, you know, sometimes. But yeah, man, just like comedies or like sometimes I'll go back and look through an actors that I like their movie catalog, and I'll just pick one, you know.
Yeah.
Um, some earlier stuff, but I feel like I watch less movies sometimes now too. I
Yeah.
think I've just been working on so much stuff where I just haven't even had time to like. But I'd watch like a movie a night, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I know what you mean. What are your top three comedies? Like the funniest ones that do it for you?
say Napoleon Dynamite,
Yeah.
um, super bad. Probably like Pineapple Express or something. Like I love
Yes.
those kind of
Yeah.
like Seth Rogen comedies, like Jonah Hill stuff. I just like love that.
So good. Yeah. So good.
There was one I watched recently on Amazon that was called Ricky Stenicki. Had
I
John Cena in it.
literally, I literally watched it last night, by the way.
Yeah, really? I actually
Yeah.
really enjoyed that. I like
Yeah.
really like that one. It's
It
funny.
was it was really good to be fair, like surprisingly good. Because I wanted to watch it since it got released, but I had the chance like literally like a day ago or so. And I really enjoyed it because it had this sort of 2000 vibe that we've been talking about.
For sure.
It was
Yeah.
kind of silly and yeah, it's just feel good movie, I guess.
Yeah.
But Johnson, I guess, is having this sort of appeal to himself with
Yeah.
with the peacemaker as well and all that stuff. So that was definitely a good watch. Yeah, I guess they're not that the sort of quality movies nowadays. I think uh, I guess the most type of movies I'm seeing lately it's like these sort of dramedies and these sort of coming of age drama like movies, which they're fine, that there's interesting stuff there, but it kind of gets oversaturated, I guess, like with all
Yeah.
the projects on Netflix and stuff. So
Yeah, definitely, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the movie that I just wrote that we did the reading for, we actually are like consciously going to try to emulate that early 2000s like vibe,
nice,
you know. And we're all
nice.
because we all love that stuff, so
Yeah.
don't know how, to do it really, but we're just gonna kind of keep that in our minds
Uh,
whenever we shoot that. So definitely a special thing.
I guess it will show. Yeah, it definitely has to show. And you've mentioned that you got involved with the boys as well, right?
Yeah, I did
What?
just did like background on
Yeah.
a couple episodes. Have you seen the show?
Yes.
There's
I
one episode where it's in season 1, episode 5, where they're at some big Christian event. And Homelander comes flying onto the stage and does a speech.
yeah, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was actually like a security guard on the stage, which was really cool. So I was like right beside all the actors, and it was really cool, man. It was like surreal experience doing
That's
that.
amazing. I'll have to rewatch that to see you there. That would be
Yeah,
amazing. And how did this happen? Like, how did you arrange that?
there's all these agencies anybody can sign up with, just talent agencies for
Uh,
extras, and send in your headshots and sign up, and they'll just email you like, hey, we have a shoot this day, and it's pretty cool. Like, so I got a ton of that, like, because they're always looking for people, so
yeah.
it was very easy to get into that. So
Oh my God. I can imagine. I can't imagine what was it like to go there and be part of such a production. I guess it was like,
it was amazing, and I didn't know anything about the show,
oh, I
but there was an actor from Lord of the Rings there, and that's my
Carol,
favorite
Carol
film.
Urban. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just like, man, I can't believe this guy. But then it was cool because I watched the show and it became one of my favorite shows, so it was just cool,
It's yeah,
really
it's
cool to.
it's amazing. I think they're releasing season 4 soon. I think
Yeah, yeah, I
so.
can't wait.
I'm definitely looking forward to it as well. Yeah, such a great show to be fair.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it's intense, but it's good.
yeah, it's I mean, at least it's different, with all the cookie cutter comic movies and stuff like that. Like it's so
Mhm.
refreshing to see something, you know,
Yeah,
something
definitely.
different in this area. Are you into comic movies as well?
Like superhero stuff, you mean,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah, yeah,
not really? No, I've never been that into that. Like I like some of the Spider-Mans and the Dark
yeah,
Knight and all that stuff, but I've never been a huge comic
yeah.
guy.
I guess that's definitely serves you better with, because there are lots of not that good stuff in this area, I guess, especially
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
recently.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with Lord of the Rings, you've mentioned this is one of your favorites, right?
Yeah,
Wow. Do you like The
it
Hobbit
is.
as well?
I did. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. It was different, but
Yeah.
I guess just being in that world is just cool. Just to be there
Yeah.
again. I didn't end up watching the series. I watched one episode and I just felt like it was so different, where I was
Yeah.
just like, I don't know.
If you want to
But
watch it, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, those
it's
movies are magical, man. I love them.
yeah, like Peter Jackson did such a great job to like visualize everything so, close to the book. Because I
Yeah.
remember that I've read the books before that, and I was very skeptical about the movie itself, but it makes so much sense when you watch it, and everything is so,
Yeah.
real. It's
Yeah.
such a great production.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. But it's great that you're having these sort of different you know, creative outlets, I guess. Like do you have any other activities that you're invested in currently, or even if there are hobbies, that interest you or that you invest yourself in?
No, I actually really don't. I no. I
Yeah.
just film stuff, and I a lot of just trying to learn, like I do, I'll do some post-production work for other people, like editing and coloring and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But I don't really have much else that I do, like
Yeah.
besides that. Yeah, no,
Well, that's pretty handful
pretty
if you
much it.
ask me anyway. So
Yeah, definitely, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I used to, I used to have some other stuff, like used to be really into weightlifting and that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, but just kind of
Oh
focus on
wow.
what I'm doing. So
Yeah, that's the way it should be, I guess. I think the best sort of failing is to be passionate about something and to be able to invest yourself in. So it's great that you found that.
definitely, man. Yeah.
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 So basically what people can expect from you, like, going further, like what's the next thing that we can expect from you, whether it's in terms of music or movies or whatever.
Yeah, so I have a song coming out every month up through the fall.
Oh
So
wow.
just a bunch of new songs.
Hmm.
And yeah, like I said, I'm working on a new album too.
Yeah.
And I don't know when I'll be done, but I'm kind of hoping to put it out like late this year, maybe early next year. So I'll
Hmm.
definitely still be making music, and putting it
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
Probably do a new music video as well sometime soon. But yeah, besides that, just yeah, like I said, drop the trailer for Farlight
Hmm.
probably next month and keep people updated on my YouTube. But that's pretty much going to be the next project is just shooting that and figuring out a release date for that. But in the meantime, yeah, lots of music and collabs.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, the best way for people to get in touch with whatever you're working on is your YouTube channel, right?
Yes, yeah, my YouTube channel. I kind of forgot to mention kind of a hobby I do have is
Yeah.
with designing like merch.
Oh wow.
I've always really loved doing that. So I have a huge merch shop that I update pretty much every month with new stuff. There's tons of stuff on there, and that is something I really like to do. Just besides music, I just kind of like to make cool clothes, hoodies, a lot of hoodies. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, there's that. But yeah, just YouTube pretty much, and my mailing list, which people can join on the website for the merch website. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Amazing. Amazing. It's I'm definitely, very, very happy to see you, thriving in these sort of different avenues, and, that you're feeling good and that you're feeling creative with everything. And um, I'm definitely interested to see, your movies and all of your film work that you're doing. So hopefully we'll see something soon. I'd love to watch it.
yeah, man.
Um,
I will. I'll send you the one we have shot after this.
Oh
So
yes,
you can check.
please, please.
Yeah, I'll do that.
I'd watch it right away. Honestly,
Yeah,
so
sure.
so excited to see it, and I'll definitely see this scene from The Boys as well.
Sweet. Yeah.
Because when you've mentioned it, I kind of have like a distant memory that I might have seen you, and that it might have struck something there, but I don't remember. So I'd love to revisit that too.
Sweet.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for doing that. It was so great to explore everything that you do, and to hear your perspective on so many different things. Because as I've mentioned, I've been, I wanted to do this for a while. So it feels great that I finally managed to have this conversation with you. And yeah, I'd love to arrange another one as soon as
Yeah.
as soon as you have a movie out or whatever the case might be. It would be fantastic. And yeah, again, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah. Thank you for asking about all the film stuff. I really appreciate
Sure,
that.
sure,
It's
of
nice to be able to
course.
talk about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It's not very often I meet like-minded individuals that I can talk about
Yeah.
that with. So I should be the one thanking you, I guess.
Yeah, man. Happy to
Uh,
talk about it.
yeah, sure, sure. So yeah, thank you. I'd love to keep in touch. So if at any
Definitely.
point there's anything I can help with or whatever, feel free to reach out. I would love to, collaborate and talk or yeah, whatever. So
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely, man.
yeah, awesome. Yeah, so thank you again. It was great talking to you, and honestly, hopefully we'll talk. Hopefully we'll talk soon again.
Definitely, man. Yeah, thank you. And I will send that film over.
Please do, please do. Awesome, awesome. Thank you, and talk to you soon.
All right, man. Yeah, have a good
Yeah.
weekend.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too.